I knew a guy at a former parish who for 15 years wore a hairpiece. Now, he was like in his 60s when I first knew him, so he was older. Now, it wasn't one of these really bad ones, like it looked like a dead animal on the top of his head. And he kept it pretty clean, because sometimes you see those and they're kind of greasy. And it was even the color of gray, so it wasn't like he's really trying to look that much younger. And you could tell, however, that it was not his real hair. And he was kind of upfront about it, too. He would make references to it, basically acknowledging that it wasn't real. Still, it was quite surprising that soon after his wife died, he quit wearing the hairpiece. It took quite a while for us to adjust to his look because he was pretty bald, just looked so much different. And then one day somebody finally had the nerve to ask him why he quit wearing the hairpiece. And he simply stated, "Because I don't need to impress my wife anymore." We all do things to impress others. We all want to look good in the eyes of other people. Even some who aren't quite as worried about what others think of them usually has that certain person, that certain group of people that they're still more concerned about how they appear to them. If this was not such a common human experience, why is Jesus addressing it in today's gospel? You know, in this gospel, he's addressing two people, but I think we all can relate to both of these groups. You know, sometimes we're like those who's trying to get that place of honor, that good seat at the banquet. We're trying to impress others in a way that makes us feel a little more important in the world. Now, at other times, we might be like the host, careful about who we hang out with in order to maintain our status and not get dragged down by others. And Jesus is warning against putting this kind of energy into our life. Instead, he tells us to do the opposite, striving for the lower positions, to be lowly. Which, if you think about it, most people admire others who are not so ambitious about seeking so much recognition. And also, Jesus is alerting us to strive more to be in the company of those who are lowly, seeking to uplift others instead of us being lifted up. Or, in the words of today's first reading, conduct your affairs with humility, and you will be loved more than a giver of gifts. Humble yourself, the more, the greater you are, and you will find favor with God. Humility as the path to find favor with God is really the path to being open to the truth of God. God sent his Son, who humbled himself to share our humanity. Then he was very much humbled when he died for our sins, especially when we did not deserve that. And he was raised from the dead in order that we might share in eternal glory. Being glorified in other people's eyes is nothing in comparison to God's glory, in which we already share in our baptism. In fact, Jesus warns us that if we put any effort in seeking our own glory, in others' eyes, this is eventually going to backfire against us. And if we share God's glory with others, especially the least glorified in the eyes of the world, then we will practice true humility and find favor with God. One of the best ways to practice humility is giving God the precious gift of our time in prayer. To sacrifice doing something else and spending that time instead with the Lord is a true act of humility. Especially when you consider that when you spend that time in prayer, it may not be something you necessarily get something out of in those minutes. You might not necessarily feel God's closeness. And you might just have to humbly trust that giving your heart as best you can, completely over to the Lord, will be felt sometime in some place in your life. Or maybe to be so humble that prayer is something we'll never really know the true effect of. And the effect might not be in us, it might be in others, in some other time, in some other place. A very good example of the humility that prayer leads us into is our response to the tragic shooting in Minnesota of children during a Catholic school mass. We certainly pray for those children killed, for the many families who carry this trauma with them and probably will for years to come. We even pray for God's mercy on the shooter. But we continue to feel that ache, don't we? Of this constant cycle of senseless evil that's happening around us, especially to our children, especially in places of worship. What greater act of humility might we all practice than to spend additional time in prayer, not just for others, but expressing our longing for peace to reign in our land, letting our hearts ache in front of Jesus hanging on the cross, pleading with him to let his love flow from his tender heart, asking God first to transform us and others in heart and mind, so that we can start living in a new way of a culture of life and love. And then to continue to pray humbly that perhaps from us or in God's power in the world, that real change can start happening. Action that eliminates violence, heals the broken, and protects innocent souls. Today, Jesus is inviting us to quit spending time trying to impress others and not to worry about impressing God, because He's already impressed by us. He created us out of His love. Let's quit seeking places of honor and trying to look important in the eyes of the world. Let's discard our spiritually fake hairpieces and instead be humble. Humble yourself, the greater you are. and you will find favor with God.